Hello and welcome to today's webinar where we will be discussing the latest trends in operational risk scenarios developed by financial services firms. My name is Steve Bishop. I'm the Head of Risk Information at ORX and I am joined by the ORX Scenarios team, Giuseppe Alloy and Lily Longregan.
Hi, Steve.
Hello.
However, before we get stuck into the topic, and for those that are new to us, I wanted to introduce ORX. ORX is the world's largest operational risk management industry association. Owned and managed by our 103 members, we aim to drive continuous progress in the operational risk discipline, providing innovative, high-quality services that enable the exchange of data, information, ideas, and experience amongst our ever-expanding community of financial institutions and risk professionals. One of these services, ORX Scenarios, is where subscribers from over 50 of these financial institutions from across the globe focus specifically on operational risk scenarios, considering both the practices around developing scenarios and the types of risks being considered. As part of this service, subscribers annually anonymously exchange their top scenarios, forming what is called the ORX Scenario Library. All subscribers can access the nearly 1,000 records through our secure platform. They can use these to identify trends, benchmark their portfolios, and gather ideas on how to develop their own scenarios further, such as adding scenarios that may be more contemporary, or focusing on emerging risks, or updating or changing scenario storylines to facilitate a better assessment. Today, we'll be focusing on ORX's analysis of and observations of the 2020 Scenario Library. Turning to our panelists. Giuseppe, so we can see the top 5 risk categories reported in the library this year. From the analysis the team has conducted, what are the main themes that you've seen?
Thanks, Steve. So by looking at the library and at the volume of scenarios that were submitted by our members, it is evident how scenarios reflect both current top concerns for financial institutions and also emerging risks. Let me give you 2 examples. You won't be surprised to hear that conduct risk is the top concern for financial firms. Indeed, if you look at the volume of scenario records submitted by our members participating in the library, it is evident how over 90% of our members shared at least one conduct-related scenarios, and such as mis-selling or market manipulation, or even customers overcharged for a number of years. On top of that, the other big theme is definitely resilience. And I must admit that this might be influenced by the Bank of England paper on banks' operational resilience, which suggested our members to start collecting some business disruption related scenarios. Indeed, this year we decided to collect the usual most material risk and also some disruption scenarios, some business disruption related scenarios. The idea that from our members was to use information reported in a disruption scenario to better define resiliency test scenarios. So therefore, we do expect to collect more of this kind of scenario in the coming years.
Thanks very much, Giuseppe. Turning to you, Lily, when you were looking at the data, were you able to spot any regional differences around these topics?
Yeah, so let me echo Giuseppe's comments and provide a couple of differences on conduct and resilience that we saw in our analysis. So as already mentioned, conduct-related scenarios were submitted by the majority of members, and we do see within retail banking that retail mis-selling scenarios is often the most commonly submitted category, regardless of the region. In Asia Pacific, we have seen this trend for the last 3 years, and retail mis-selling has always been the top in retail banking within that region. The scenarios around conduct are usually driven by failures in detecting malpractice in selling and the high number of customers involved in the incidents. For business disruption, which can be linked to resilience, we see in North American institutions that this is often considered one of the most material risks. Over the last 3 years, scenarios referring to business disruption, which include natural disasters, vendor failure, and cyber attacks, featured highly in scenarios reported from the region.
Thank you. One other area that I'm interested in, are we seeing any trends in the way that scenarios are being developed from the analysis of the library?
Yeah, Steve. So we noticed among scenarios, regardless of the regional scenario category, that time to detect was included commonly as a risk driver. The scenarios such as data breach, improper business practice, and suspicious transactions or suspicious activity were particularly prominent in having this time to detect consideration. So time is important for the risk management response for any incident, as the earlier the financial institution's aware of something, they are able to respond faster and mitigate any further wrongdoings. So just as an example, with mis-selling practices, they can often go on for many years before there's wider knowledge that something has been going wrong. So the earlier that a practice such as this is identified, the lower that the impacts are likely to be, both the financial and non-financial impacts. So that's quite important for scenarios. And just to add here that we saw this in discussions with our ORX member firms in the initial stages of the coronavirus outbreak, where many of them shared that accessing live data was crucial for firms to respond timely and implement risk management measures to respond to the situation.
That's great, thank you. Before we finish, there is one thing that I want to pick up on. Obviously, the pandemic has swept across the world this year, and at ORX we've undertaken studies looking at the impact on our members' operational risk profiles and some of the significant changes that we've witnessed there. Given the changes we've seen from these studies, Giuseppe, do we feel that they've been reflected in the scenario library this year? Are we seeing similar patterns?
That's a very interesting question, and unfortunately not yet, Steve. We need to understand that scenario library is an annual exercise, and most firms have submitted the scenario they created before the pandemic broke out. So I think that changes in risk profiles can be reflected in next year cycle or in next 2 year cycles. What do you think, Lily?
I agree with that, Giuseppe. I think we are likely to see some changes in the scenarios submitted in 2021 and even going forward based on the changing operational risk profiles that we're seeing across the financial industry. So we do expect to see more scenarios for categories linked to business continuity, cyber, conduct and resilience in the future years.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Lily. It'll be interesting to see if we do see those changes reflected when we repeat this analysis next year. It will also, the other area that will be interesting is to compare those future changes with the coronavirus related operational risk loss events that our members are starting to anonymously share through ORX. We've begun to analyse and we'll be reporting on those losses that have been submitted. So it'll be interesting to compare actual experience to those changes in the scenario profile. Okay, so that draws to a close the discussion today. I'd like to thank Lily and Giuseppe for their very insightful contributions. And I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to listen. A summary report covering the points made is available to download from ORX, and the full report with the full details is available to all ORX Scenario subscribers. We also have other resources available to non-members, and I would encourage you to visit our website and also to follow us on LinkedIn for all our latest updates. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you.